Before we begin, a little bit of a community challenge re-announcement, I guess, because my previous video was the announcement video for this. So we're doing a Nakagin Capsule Tower community challenge, where anyone in the community can of course participate, hand in their designs, and possibly win prizes. And the reason why I'm specifying it in this video is because we'll be using exactly the same tablet as what's the prize for the first place winner, which is Huion Canvas 16. A great tablet altogether, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in the video. But if you're interested in attending this challenge and trying out your strengths, then you can just click a link in the video description. After you watch this video, please click a link in the video description, see all of the rules, and try it out. Okay, so custom Rhino unwrapping and then texturing, right? When do you use it and for what reason would you use it? In most cases, at least in architectural design, you don't really need a UV unwrap, right? But when you have geometry that's pretty complex, or when you want the geometry to map perfectly, or textures to map perfectly on top of geometry, then you use custom UV unmap. So think of it this way: as you take a piece of geometry, doesn't matter which one, well, let's say this one, and instead of projecting textures on top of its surfaces from different sides, which is basically either cylindrical mapping or box mapping, you're basically unwrapping. So you're unfolding the geometry into a flat sheet, right? You're mapping the textures on top of it, and you're folding back the geometry into, its original shape, right? So for that, of course, you can't just unfold the box. You need seams. You need to see where the computer can actually cut to be able to unfold. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. So in terms of UV unmapping, let me just show you this. Basically for the Nakagin capsule, by the way, part of the challenge, right? Nakagin capsule interior, I already have all of these kind of little shelves and whatnot unwrapped, and you can see they have textures that I've already made right here in Rhino. This is not going to be part of the tutorial. This time the tutorial is going to be about unwrapping the exterior shell and using Substance Painter together with our Huion graphics tablet to draw the textures on top of it, right? So that's the plan. So without any further ado, let's just grab the only piece that is not unwrapped in my case, which is the exterior shell. Let me just select objects and isolate, and let's start working on it. So in terms of Rhino, the way it works is UV unwrapping for a long time was pretty gnarly in Rhino and pretty annoying. So the way it works right now is if you unwrap, let me actually show it to you in a more simple way. If I have a box here and a smaller box like so, right? These two boxes, and I want to unwrap these boxes, right? So let's start with the small one, right? I just say unwrap, and then I need to click on edges that I agree should be cut, right? So for you to unfold the box, some parts, some edges of it need to be cut. So I'm just selecting the edges. So let's say something like that. So this bottom folds out like so, and like that probably. Yeah, something like this. I hit enter, and it's technically unwrapped. And the way I can check how it looks like unwrapped, I can just select it and type in a UV editor. It asks me to draw a rectangle, sure thing. I just draw a rectangle, and I can see my box laid out. There's also a chance for me to use texture here under, I'll just show it in a separate window like so. What the hell happened there? So it can be shown with a texture, and you can see that the texture is not crooked, everything is kind of neat. And then if I move this around, you can see that the texture moves as well. If I rotate this, the texture rotates as well, right? So this is literally the unfolded version of this box. Okay, so now the tricky bits. If I also unwrap this, or let's say I want both of these to be unwrapped in the same size, right? So when I export them as a single object, I need them to be, their textures to match up, right? How the hell do I do that? Well, glad you asked. Or the scale of the textures to match up, sorry. Glad you asked. We need to unwrap this one, or we don't need to, but if I were to unwrap this one right now, in the same way as what we've done before, like that, and I select both of these, and I do UV editor, sorry, select, you can see that both of these have exactly the same island size. So these are called islands, by the way. They have the same island size. So the texture, even though I'm using the same texture on both of them, the texture is scaled down to this one. So suddenly, think of it as if this is concrete, right? In this case, the concrete pattern would be much bigger, and in this case, it would be smaller. But we want it to be consistent, right? We want both patterns of concrete to be consistent between these. So what do we do? Well, let me cancel out of that, and let's just select both of these now. Type in unwrap. It asks me to select seams. I'll just try to select previous seam selection. That's great. It remembers the seams for both of them. I hit enter. So now they're both unwrapped together. And now if I select them again, UV editor, now this respects the size, right? So now this is much smaller, and now both of them, let me actually scale them up like that, but now both of them are, the textures on them are the same scale. This is important, right? Because you want consistency. So when you unwrap things, you want to unwrap all of the objects that need to share the same texture scale together, right? Keep that in mind. Okay. Now on to our shell. So the unwrapping process is pretty straightforward, right? It's just like with the boxes. I will go through every single one of these elements and I will unwrap them one by one, right? So let me just isolate this and let's just see what can be, where can we add seams where it won't matter, right? So I'm gonna say unwrap. So for sure, the whole bottom perimeter, this seam right here doesn't matter because it's the ceiling is going to have a different material and it's going to be hidden in this incision right here, right? So to select the whole perimeter, it's quite convenient. I can just double click on an edge and then it just keeps going until it reaches some sort of a moment where it either branches out or where it breaks the continuity. In this case, it's continuous, so it just kind of does it. And then in terms of unfolding this whole thing, I think we can get away with just, with just doing something like so. So let's say that one. Like that, and then this one is going to be awkward for unfolding. There's going to be a little bit of stretching going on, but I think that's going to be fine. And I'm purposely going to add the seams here just so that the texture grid does not line up perfectly for, actually here as well, just so that the texture grid does not line up perfectly for the whole shape, right? So these are separate elements in the real world. So I want the textures to not be continuous between this part and this part. So I'm just selecting all of this. Honestly, yeah, something like that. You can always check by, you hit enter, it does the thing, then you do UV editor, you select the object, expand it, check the islands, and these are the corners, right? So you can see that the corners are indeed being distorted quite a bit, which is, I mean, it's not that bad. Let's make all of this much bigger, just to check. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of distortion, so maybe we do need to add a little bit more to the corners in terms of cutting, but I'm not sure what would be the best way to you either create a cut or you have distortion, right? There's no easy solution to this kind of problem, so maybe we'll leave it be. Let's leave it be. Okay, so this one part is done. Let me do all of the rest, and I'll just speed up the process so that you don't need to look at me doing monotonous things for a long time. So while future me, past me, or current me, I'm not sure, is unwrapping the 3D model, let's talk about Huion Canvas 16. Do you see it? Yeah, you probably see it. The tablet that is going to be given away. So I've been using this tablet for 2-3 weeks now, and it's actually been quite nice, quite a convenient little tool. So the screen for it is color accurate. It's 120% RGB coverage, which is good enough for most use cases in terms of architecture. For graphics designers, I'm not sure. I'm not a graphics designer, right? So I can't say that for sure. In terms of the sensitivity of the screen, it has, I believe, 8,000 pressure levels, which is awesome for sculpting or doing texturing. It's amazing, really convenient, and it's a HD screen, so there's the resolution is not that great, but you don't really need it on a 16-inch screen. You don't need like a 4K resolution on a 16-inch screen. The power delivery is done through The power delivery is done through USB-C cable that kind of branches out into a power plug as well as an HDMI port for your computer. So it's quite a portable little machine and quite nice to carry with you, get into your backpack, bring it to school or whatnot. I honestly am impressed by the build quality and by how convenient it proved to be over the course of these 2 weeks. So I'm pretty sad that I will need to give it away, but hey, it is what it is. Back to the video. Alright, so with UV unwrapping done, it's time to export, but before we actually get to the exporting bit, there's a few things to fix, of course, and I'll try to guide you through the process as well as I can, but it's at this stage it gets a little bit soft and soft in the sense that it's hard to predict what's gonna happen before you actually create the UV editor and look at the islands. So before we do that, let's isolate. So select objects, isolate, only get the objects that we need to unwrap, and remember, every single object right here was unwrapped individually, meaning that the sizes between them are not respected. We can't have that. We need all of the sizes of the islands to be in relation to one another, right? So we need to select all of these objects all together, unwrap, type in unwrap, choose previous seam selection so that we get all of the seams of the objects that we already placed, and hit enter. And now all of the islands will be re-unwrapped together, meaning that the sizes of them will correspond to each other, right? So once this is done, then we can select this UV editor, expand that, look at it, and basically just go through the islands, checking if, you know, they're aligning properly and whatnot. So for instance, this one is crooked. I'm gonna check which one it is. It's the inner one for this wall. We're okay with that being crooked. That's fine with us. All of the corners are a little bit gnarly. That's fine. This one is really crooked. What's up with that? Okay, that's the inner frame. Yeah, that's expected. That's okay. This one though, this one is a problem. Okay, so now if let's say I scale this up, right? I'll show you how that problem will transfer into the actual texture mapping. So I scaled this up so that the texture is smaller because the islands are bigger. And here you can clearly see that this area becomes crooked, right? So the texture on this is bad. So the reason for that is because this is bending outwards like that, and we need to investigate to know what we need to fix. So I'll hit cancel. I'll select the problematic shape. I'll isolate it and I'll unwrap it again. Not unwrap it, sorry, a UV editor. I'll create a UV editor just for this. Like that. Okay, so it is this island right here. Cancel that and let's see. Unwrap. Previous seam selection to see the seams. And let's try to kind of visualize how this would unfold. So we have this pretty clean perimeter for this front surface, except that it has this bevel, right? And this bevel, I think, is the bevel that's at fault, because the zooming, come on, zoom, unwrap, previous seams. So this bevel right here creates this edge. So the way I'm thinking is that when it tries to unfold this 45-degree edge that's kind of folding backwards, it needs to curve. It needs to curve the shape, right? And it prioritizes that edge. So what we say to fix that is, yeah, this can be cut. You can cut inwards to flap them out, to fold them out, right? And I guess here as well. Let's see if there's any problems at the bottom. Yep, there are, like that. And this one as well, I guess. Okay, now I just hit enter, UV editor, check that one out. Now it's clean. Now it's not folding out, right? So that's how you kind of go through the islands and then see, if there's something that you've missed or if the program behaves in a weird way. Now again, we need to isolate all of the exterior shell geometries, like so. Unwrap again. Preview seam selection. You always want to, again, make sure that you're unwrapping everything all together. UV editor. Rhino 8 will have a much better UV editor, by the way. Just letting you know. If you're frustrated as much as I am, they are fixing it. This looks clean. Okay, so we have ourselves unwrapped texture, right? A bunch of islands in the texture. Now we need to export them and get them into our Substance Painter. To do that, we just select all of them, like so. Type in export, and I'll just go for NAC again, exports to Substance. I already have like stuff prepared here. OBJ, no, not OBJ. I believe we are using FBX if I remember correctly. Let me double check. If I, manage, motion builder.fbx, right? And I'll say shell new. .fbx. Hit save. Once that is done, you just have all of these settings here. I usually don't mess with the settings. I just hit export, and if something goes wrong, then I will start checking out the settings. You can always hit on preview to see what's the density of the mesh that is being exported. This seems to be okay with me. I mean, it's a little bit dense on these edges. And that's because minimum distance edge to surface is set to be 0.05 millimeters, which is, you know, a little bit out there. So I'm going to say 0.5 millimeters. Hit preview again. Come on. Yeah, that's much more friendly in terms of computation. Okay, we hit OK. And we have our FBX. So now we need to jump into Substance Painter, and we'll continue there. Okay, so you begin by actually by actually importing the files, right, into your Substance 3D Painter software. The way you do it is just drag and drop, right? So you go to your folder where you've exported the files, and you drag the FBX from it into your Substance Painter. New project is going to be created where you specify the template. In this case, I'm just using Unreal Engine 4, but if you're using it for, let's say, what's a good one? V-Ray material or PBR, metallic roughness alpha, you can always go for those kind of templates. In this case, Unreal Engine 4 should be fine. I believe you can always change the template throughout your project. Then in terms of document resolution, I always go for 4K because downsampling later, like downscaling the textures, is better than creating small textures and then trying to upscale them. Okay, and once this is done, you just hit OK. It imports your file, right, like so. And the first thing that you always do is you go to the little croissant icon. Is it croissant? Croissant icon. You click on, which is called baking, and you bake out the ambient occlusion and so on, all of these maps that are necessary. So on the left-hand side, you can see the maps that are already selected. You don't need the height or opacity, so yeah, these should be fine. You click on bake selected textures, and it's just going to do it. Then you notice that you rushed and you are actually baking out very small, low resolution textures. So you actually increase the output size to 4K and you bake it again. And now it takes longer, but now it's going to be much more accurate. Actually, now while this is doing its thing, the thing that I don't like about this tablet, the only thing that I don't like about this tablet is the brightness of the screen. I think the screen should be a little bit brighter, especially with studio lights. It's they're fighting, right? But besides that, the tablet is doing just fine. Okay, once this is done, click on the little brush icon here where we're going back into the painting mode. And here now we will have all of these, where is it? There we go. Mesh maps baked in. So ambient occlusion, for instance, will give us all of the crevices of the shape. Curvature gives us the, well, you guessed it, the curvature of the shape and so on, right? So we get all of those. Go back to lighting, material to, get to the default shape. So in terms of drawing, it's pretty straightforward. You take your pen and you draw on top of the shape, and you can see that it's immediately generating the texture for you, right? So you can draw whatever you want. I have no idea what I tried drawing there. In terms of, I forgot how to zoom in, so I'm just going to use my mouse. In terms of drawing straight lines, for instance, you use the shift key, on your keyboard. Well, you can also map out these keys on your tablet to be the shift key, any one of these, but I don't know, somehow I prefer using the keyboard, but it's just me. Different people prefer different things. But if you click, then hold down the shift key and click again, you're drawing like a straight line, right? Easy as that. Okay, let's talk about layers. So here under the on the right hand side, you can see the layers tab, and here we have our first layer that is just, you know, all of these lines that we drew. I am going to delete that layer and we're going to just create a new one. And before we do that, let me make this smaller. We don't really need to see the messy bit, the messy lines. Okay, the messy islands. So the first layer that we use is going to be a fill layer that is just going to be the base color of this whole shell, right? So I'm just going to create a new layer right here. Oops. Where is it? There we go. New layer here, which actually that's the wrong one, sorry. You click on the paint bucket tool like so, which generates the fill layer, what's called the fill layer. So it fills in everything here, and you can then choose from the materials tab what kind of a material you want. So I'm going to go for concrete cast, right? And drag it. Well, you can drag it either here or just on top of this. My bad, if you drag it on top, it just creates a new layer. I didn't know that. Doesn't matter, then we can just delete the fill layer and just have the concrete cast be created that way. So it's the same thing as a fill layer. Okay. You have this, but the problem with it, by the way, the scaling is kind of nice, but the problem with it is the scale of the texture. It's a little bit too big. So to change the scale, it's actually pretty simple. You just click on the concrete cast layer, and here you can change the tiling, right? So you can increase or decrease the tiling as you want. So I'm going to go for something that is like 3. So 3 repetitions, right? This seems to be quite nice, quite okay. So we're going to stick with this. Already you can see that this type of unwrapping really helps you with the quality of the material, how the material is being pushed on top of the shape, right? Box map would really have troubles with these areas and like these bends and so on. Okay, so now we're done with the base coat or base color, base material, and it's time to move on. And the next step is to actually understand that here the interior of the shape is not going to have that concrete texture, right? So we need to get rid of it there. And the easiest way to do it is with what's called a mask. Those of you who are familiar with Photoshop already know that a mask is basically a black and white image that controls the opacity of the layer, right? So to create a mask for this particular material, you just click on here, add mask, and you add a white mask. Why not black? Because white is white makes it so that the material is still shown. So anything that is white in the mask is 100% 0% everything that is white in the mask is 100% opaque, and everything that is black in the mask is 0% opaque. Everything that is medium gray in the mask is 50% opaque. That's how it works. Okay, so now in terms of actually creating the mask, well, you can brush it on, right? So I'm now, you can see here, I'm drawing it in a black color, right? So you can either use your brush, you can of course, start filling it in and so on, but this would take too long, and we need to have some sort of a filling function, and thankfully we do have that. So here on the left hand side, you click on this little icon here, that is, I believe, polygon fill or polygon mask, polygon fill, yes, polygon fill. And then you can simply, most likely changing it to black will be better. But then you can just simply click on the polygons that you want to fill. For some reason it switched to mesh fill. No, we use polygon fill, and you can start filling in the polygons that way, right? There's also a possibility to just do UV chunk fill and click on the chunks like so, and that's going to work. But in my experience, UV chunk fill, for instance, I just want to fill in one of these, right? One of these chunks, and let's go for base color. I just want to fill in this chunk. I believe, at least, unless they fixed it, if I just click here, oh, never mind. So this one stays normal. That's great. That means all we need to do is just click, click, click. And the interior here as well, click. And that's that. Now we have ourselves a separated interior from the exterior, right? If I go back to my material color here, and let's switch back to our shading, to our brush mode. Now you can see that the interior does not have that concrete material. Also, by the way, to switch the light angle, you just hold the shift key and you right click and drag. Shift, right click, drag. And you can change the light angle. All right, so this seems to be going quite smoothly. Let's move on. Camera died. Okay, so it's time to add in some dirt and some rust in our on top of our base geometry, base material, right? So to do so, of course, we need to create a new layer, and we're going to use a mask to determine where does the rust go. So to create a new layer, I just simply choose, I guess, we can just drag and drop, I guess. So under materials right here, you will find metal rust. There should be one. Yep, there we go. Metal rust material that you can drag and drop in on top of your shape. And you can see a new layer is immediately created. So this material, of course, comes with a bunch of different settings that you can change, and I will play around with them just a tiny bit. Maybe this could be something like that, like that. Should the grain be intense or not? Whoa, that's very intense. Let's make it less intense, something like that. Okay, and of course the tiling is way off. It's very large, so I'm going to amp it up to 10. Whoa. Well, maybe not 32, but maybe also not 10. This seems to be better. Of course, the intensity and whatnot, all of these things can be adjusted, and the amount of bump that you're getting also can be adjusted, but I don't want to spend too much time on those things, honestly. So with the metal, let's say, being good enough, we can just create a black mask for this as well. And this is where we start brushing, in the texture. So typically, well, actually now I can see here that the texture that is going to be brushed on, I can show you. See how this is not, like, this is transparent and this is bad, right? The reason why this is bad is because we're using a material rather than a color for the alpha channel, right? So we can't have that. So where it says grayscale, let's get rid of the material. So click that X, and now you're gonna be dealing with color. And again, black color means erase, and white color will mean draw, like that, right? Before we start drawing, we need to choose what's the what's the brush that we're gonna be using, right? So I'm going to go to my brush settings right here, and I can mess around, but the main thing that I care about is the alpha. You know, what's the alpha that we're using, and here from all of these alphas I can choose the one that I like. So let's try pastels. Let's see. Of course that comes in very intense. Maybe pastels was a bad idea. Let's change it up. Come on. Dry brush. Also, you can, by the way, you can go in here on the left hand side and choose the brush from this menu here. That might be a little bit more convenient for you. Dry mud, dirt, charcoal, medium. Let's try that. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so I'm going to draw in a little bit of rest around where the window would go, right? And we're just kind of creating a little bit of this drip effect. Bear with me for a second. It's gonna look fine, I promise. Just need to trust the process. Okay, so at this point I'll stop. I think this is fine, perhaps. I would need to render this out to see properly if this is fine or not, but you can kind of stop here and then start checking. So one thing that I will change is the opacity. I will most likely go for something that is around 80%. Something like that, so that it's not overpowering too much, and then we'll keep going, right? So of course I would spend more time with like different bits and pieces and kind of doing like especially for the bottom areas here, like a little bit of, you know, this kind of a shebang, but we don't have the time for this, so I'm gonna skip it. I most likely will do like a live stream showing this in more detail and spending more time on this, but for a video this is too much. Okay, with that being said, let's generate some things on top of that. So we have our rusted, bloody, crappy window hole here, right? And on top I will create one more layer that is gonna be called dirt, right? So we're going to make dirt in this, and that is going to be what's called a smart material, like so, smart material. and I'm just going to find dirt, there we go, and just literally drag and drop it on top again. You can see a new layer is created called dirt. It's very, very intense, of course, and maybe dirt should come after, or sorry, metal rest should come above the dirt. Probably, we'll see. So in terms of dirt, if you expand this folder, you can see that there's the dirt color itself. So the material that is used for dirt, as well as dirt base. Sorry, not dirt base, but dirt base has a color as well as the mask. And the mask, literally you can draw. Oops. Can you? Maybe you can't. No. Mask editor, you would need to add more. Yeah, you would need to add more layers on top of the mask, which we can do. We can just add a paint layer on top of the mask editor, and then we can say that, yeah, I'll just draw it out, and I will just say where I really want it to be clean and not messy, right? So you can do it this way. Also in the mask editor, you can mess around with quite a few different settings. So again, there's the material with all of its sublayers, and there's the mask with its sublayers. In this case, mask editor and the paint layer. So for the mask editor, if I go in here and start looking at things, where was it? Give me a second. Am I blind? Yeah, that's fine. Balance, yeah, there we go. Texture 1, texture 2. I don't know how I missed that. But basically, you have two textures, and you have these two sliders here that control their intensity. So if I reduce texture 1, if I reduce the slider of texture, the first texture, you can see that the amount of dirt increases. So that's a little bit interesting, but what we can do is we can expand that texture, and we can say, well, the scale should be smaller, and the brightness should be lower, right? And the contrast should be higher, or the triplanar contrast should be higher. And suddenly we are left with much less of a texture for the dirt, right? For the texture 1, this one right here, right? That's just how it generates. Then for texture 2, same thing, but it's inverted. So if you decrease texture 2 like that, you can control how much of it you have. The way I want to work with this is perhaps the dirt can have, the dirt material can have like lower opacity, right? Like so. And maybe it's a multiplication type of a material, like so, right? So it's multiplied on top, or we can just use normal. That's fine as well. So you can play around with these settings as much as you want. You can find what works for you. I personally like messing around with the opacity. Okay, I won't spend much more time with this. We will be removing a lot of this crap from here, because the sides are probably not going to be that dirty. Let's find like a nice nice brush. What's the concrete brush? I never. Crystal, dark hatcher. Yeah, let's just use the dirt brush, but let's use it in an inverted state, like that. Oops. Okay, that doesn't work. Dirt brushed. There we go. That's a bit better. Okay, so let's say this whole area is a little bit cleaner, right? The top gets a bit cleaner here. And you can just use that to, you can just also just paint everything black and then use the white color to define where this needs to be base color. You can just use the white color to define where you actually want the dirt to be. In this case, since I'm kind of rushing through this, most likely I'm gonna just do it this way. So everything is dirty except the areas that I specify. Like that. And you build up the complexity this way, right? So you say, oh, come on. You say where it needs to be clean, where it needs to be dirty. Let's go for material. Let's take a look. Yeah, that seems fine. Seems fine to me. That could be better. Let's switch this to white color and let's just do dirt spots. You probably can't see this, but I'm just adding it dirt this way, like so. Let me actually increase the, there we go. Something like that. Then we can do dots. And basically you're just drawing out so that this area is going to be much more dirty than the previous one. You're just drawing out the texture of the dirt, right, on the facade, trying to break it up. Remember that the concrete texture in this facade is repeating 3 times, right? Or, well, not in this particular facade, but it is being repeated, right? So you want to hide the monotony of it as much as possible, right? And you can do so by just simply using dirt, right? Which is very nice. Let's make this black and let's just add some breaking spots here. Okay. And now for the dirt itself, I believe it should not be that that dark, right? So I'm going to say that the dark area of the dirt needs to be like something like that, and the bright area needs to be brighter, something like that. Okay, we have ourselves some rust, some dirt, you know, it's getting to become quite post-apocalyptic. I'll stop here. We overdid it with the dirt. One last thing before I bring this back into Rhino is we need to add the cutout, the mask to the dirt layer, right? So what I'm going to do is for our concrete, the mask that we're using for our concrete, I will just copy it. Copy. Wait, yeah, copy mask. Control-Alt-C. And for dirt, this whole folder, I'll paste the mask. I believe you first need to create one. Like that. And then we paste into mask. There we go. Now it worked. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. Okay, and there's still some, I believe this is rust, isn't it? So we can just simply paste into mask here as well, and it's gonna, oh yeah, I forgot. So you don't do that with the rest. You undo that, and instead you do just simply brush away, right? So we're just going to use basic hard brush and just remove the rest like so. Okay, I think we're kind of ready to go. Okay, so since we're done with texturing, at least for this tutorial, it's time to export. And the way we're going to do this is by just simply going to File, Export Textures, and choosing the correct template and export place, right? So output directory. I've already chosen the output directory. You can choose whichever you want. And for the templates, I've already chosen the templates. You can remember that I used Unreal Engine 4, but since I'm as my starting template, but since I am going to be showcasing the output to you in Rhino, doesn't make sense to use that template. So instead, I'm going for physics-based rendering metallic roughness, PBR metallic roughness template. File type, PNGs, always, 8 bits, yep, sure. Actually, I'm saying always PNGs. You can also go for JPEGs if you want to, why not? Size, I'm going for 8K just to show you the higher resolution model, right? The higher resolution output. Okay, let's just hit export, see what happens. It's gonna take a little bit of time. It's going to export these images or textures here: base color, emissive, height map, metallic, normal, and roughness. It's not gonna be exporting the emissive. It's gonna complain and say that I can't because I don't, there's nothing that's shining light in your scene, so it's not gonna generate that, but everything else is successfully exported. So now if I switch, right here, if we switch the screens, you can see in Rhino a model that's ready to be not textured, but to have materials slapped on top of them. Speaking of which, speaking of materials, here's the folder with the files, and you can see how big 8K textures get. Our base color texture is 40 megabytes. Our normal map is 70 megabytes. That's insane. If I zoom in, you can see that, you know, the texture, the quality of the texture is pretty good, but still, damn, that's a lot. Okay, but with that being said, let's just try this out. So I'm going to, actually, let's switch to rendered mode, like so that when I apply a material, you can actually see it. I'm going to create a new material in V-Ray. You can also do this in Rhino material editor as well if you want to. And I'll just say shell YouTube. I'll just create, or not create, but then I'll just drag and drop in our base color into the diffuse color, like so. And I'll just apply. So I've grouped all of the shell elements, by the way, so all of them are like grouped into one big group, but I'll just apply to selection and just see what happens. And what happens is that my computer is now starting to lag out. Yeah, there we go. It's actually fine. And here's our nice little texture here. Hey, doesn't look that bad. Doesn't look that bad at all. Then if I want to add more pizzazz to it, I can, but for that I will actually switch to V-Ray interactive mode for rendering, simply because it's going to show the reflections and the but the normal map a little bit better compared to the original. Compared to the standard render mode. Okay, so we're here, nothing too fancy, you know, just the gray material, very straightforward, very simple. Let's start adding more things. So we're going for a metallic. There we go. We're going for the metallic route of defining the material. So that means we're gonna be dealing with roughness, metallic, right? These two to define what's glossy, what's not. In those kind of instances, the reflection color is always set to pure white, like that. It's super glossy right now. And then we go for, well, let me just close that so that it's not annoying. And then we go for the roughness. First we need to change the surface control from use glossiness to use roughness. And then you can see here, glossiness changes to roughness, and then I can drag in the roughness material right here, or texture right here, right? So now where we have the cast concrete, it's glossy, it's shiny. Where we have the dirt, it's not glossy at all, right? Then we have our metallic material here. So that's just straight up drag and drop here. Not much should change because our nothing's metallic here, so it's just a black material. And one last thing before we move on to creating bump and displacements is under the generic material name, you can see here this switch to advanced settings mode. So I click on that, which enables me to also add diffuse roughness. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the correct way is to actually use the generic roughness map on this diffuse roughness input here. I couldn't explain to you what it actually does, but hey, it's the correct way, so we're doing it. Then for the bump map, I'm just going to drag and drop the normal into the bump map slot, like so. And of course, I will change the bump map from bump to normal, like so. You can see that the behavior of the surface changes dramatically and it looks really weird, and that's because we need to change the way the normal map is mapped. So I'm going to go into the normal map here, and from the transfer function, instead of sRGB, I will choose automatic transfer. And just hope that it's gonna figure it out. It does. It did figure it out, and now this is again correct, right? It's a very aggressive normal map, ain't gonna lie. I would probably need to go back into either Substance Painter or here and change the amount to something that's a little bit more subtle, right? But then, yeah, there you have it. We have ourselves material that properly works, right? And that is mapped on multiple pieces in Rhino, and all of them are working, right, separately, and just from one material. I think that's a very, very nice thing to have, and that's it. We're calling it a day. Calling it a day. So I hope you've enjoyed this or found this informative. And check out, please design the inside of this. Look how fun it can be. Look. See, you can make a cool desk and whatnot, and the phone, and it can be all nice. And then you're gonna get this tablet, this awesome tablet, really lightweight. I'm gonna, I don't know, sign it. No, I won't sign it. My signature has absolutely no value. But just please please do the competition. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna vote on it. It's do it. Okay, I'll see ya. Bye. Bye.